caucus to a member of that caucus who supports the deal and is telling his colleagues to get off the stick, to get to work, to get this done. Talking about Michigan Democrat Gary Peters, who joins us now. Congressman, good to have you.
Great.
You
Great
are
to be with
for
you,
this, and there are many parts you don't like, including extending the tax rates on the well-to-do. But you say in the order to compromise and just moving forward, better move on this now. But they could drag this out, right?
Well, they could. We'll find out. I'll be heading to caucus. We've got a series of votes that are up right now, and then afterwards we've got the Democratic caucus to discuss it. But now is the time. I think it's critical that we make sure that middle-class taxpayers know that their tax rates will stay the same going forward. We've got to be very concerned about the unemployment compensation, particularly in Michigan, where we've got very high levels of unemployment. We've got families that are counting on those resources just to put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. This is very serious business. I think we've got both sides that have given. The president has worked to find that kind of common ground.
No, I know all that, sir. With all due respect, I know that, and touche on all of that. I guess what I'm wondering is the process involved here. I know the caucus is going to look at ways they can distinguish maybe on things like the estate tax and all that. But when you hear John Kyle and you hear Mitch McConnell say you change it, you all but lose it and trash it, and it's a memory, there's not a lot of wiggle room there.
Well, they're certainly not putting it out there, but I think the House understands that we're a co-equal partner in all of this, and certainly the House has the opportunity to have their say in these nenegotiations.
Oh, I understand that, but what would change? Would it be the estate tax? Because if the senators who say they hammered out this agreement with the president say that this is an immovable, undebatable point, and you guys move it or debate it, then we could lose it, right?
Well, it's possible, but hopefully that's not going to happen. Certainly, I hope that doesn't happen. I'm going to be standing up against that. But there are certainly members in the caucus that believe that the estate tax was a bridge too far, so to speak, too far, wasn't necessary in the agreement, and want to put that vote forward. My view is that this is all temporary. We've got to move it forward, and we've got to have as you've talked about, Neal, on repeated occasions, it's got to be part of a broader discussion of deficit reduction as well, which is why it's important that these are temporary, and we get serious about deficit reduction, which means looking at spending cuts as well going forward, and looking at tax policy related to spending policy. Right now, these are separate. That's not the way to reduce the federal deficit.
You've been way ahead of this than a lot of your colleagues. Touche to that. I'm talking about Republicans and Democrats about addressing some of these long-term spending needs. But I'm curious about this process again. The Senate ultimately votes on a final measure that makes its way to you guys. You tinker around with some things. You can't change a lot of things. What is your best guess you're hearing from your leaders as to when you vote on this and when this is all wrapped up, assuming it is?
Well, a vote can come as early as tomorrow. We've got the vote in the Senate, as you mentioned in the opening tonight. You can see a movement to have this House vote tomorrow. We'll see what happens in caucus. I know there is quite a bit of support within the Democratic caucus to move that number back when it comes to the estate tax. We'll see if the votes are there, but certainly I think you're likely to see that vote tomorrow.
Okay, we're also getting word that we're likely to see this Senate vote that you said might happen tonight, could happen likely sometime tomorrow. Having said that, let's say the House approves. We already know the Senate approval. Let's say you guys have some minor differences. Do you adjust that, compromise that, send it to the president for signature? Is that the procedure?
Or you said, well, if we make those adjustments and go back to the Senate and try to find some sort of middle ground between where the Senate and the House is before it goes to the president. But again, we'll have to see what happens with that vote.
Then it's a mess, Congressman. Then you got the Senate voting on something that they say you better not change it. You change it, they hate it. Go back to the House, you change it back to what it was, they hate it. Could be sloppy.
And we're running out of time. We're obviously running out of time, and the American people want to see action, which is why I hope we can get this wrapped up very quickly, and certainly that's what I'm going to be advocating for very aggressively.
All right, Congressman, you're a good man. Good having you again. Gary Peters, Democratic Congressman from the fine state of Michigan. Of course,